morning class. Welcome to your chemistry class. In the last chemistry period, we were studying about some important terms and we had to begin from oxidation reduction today. So let us understand what do we mean by oxidation. Okay. So over here, oxidation in the electronic concept, it is defined as a process in which an atom or an ion loses electron. Okay, is a process in which an atom or an ion loses electron or electrons, right? For example, like zinc, it will lose 2 electron and it will form Zn2 plus, it is getting oxidized. Or maybe sodium loses 2 electrons and forms Na plus. Okay, then I said, or an ion also can lose an electron. For example, Fe2 plus, when it loses electron, what does it form? Fe3 plus. So this is your oxidation. Similarly, sulfur 2 minus, when it loses electron, it becomes sulfur. So what are they? They are showing oxidation. Thus, oxidation can also be defined as a chemical process which involves what? Addition of oxygen or removal of hydrogen. Okay, so it can also be defined as it can also be defined as a chemical process which involves addition of oxygen or removal of hydrogen. Okay, so let's see this. You have already done this before, but still, addition of oxygen, like carbon combines with oxygen, forms carbon dioxide, so this shows oxidation. Similarly, magnesium combines with oxygen to form magnesium oxide, this is also oxidation. So over here, gain of oxygen is termed as oxidation. Or what else did I say? Removal of hydrogen. Removal of hydrogen is also your oxidation. That is, example could be like H2S plus Cl2. Okay, from H2S, H2 is removed and it goes to Cl. So removal of hydrogen has taken place. So this is going to show you oxidation. Thus H2S plus Cl2, what is it going to form? HCl plus S. So from H2S to S, it is showing us oxidation. That is, there is loss of hydrogen. Now, oxidizing agents. And oxidizing agents, they are those substances that oxidize other substances by either accepting electrons or by providing oxygen or an electronegative ion, right? Thus, uh, some of the examples of your oxidizing agents could be, you learn one or two examples of each kind. Like in solids, it is manganese dioxide or red lead or lead dioxide. Okay, then in your liquid form, it could be nitric acid or hydrogen peroxide, that is very important, concentrate sulfuric acid. These are all good oxidizing agents. Okay, in the gaseous form, you can learn chlorine or sulfur dioxide or oxygen. So I'm just using the word oxidizing agents over here, and over here they are categorized as solids, liquids and gases. So as I said, you can learn one or two examples in each category. As for solids, what did I say? It could be like manganese dioxide, it could be Pb3O4. For liquid, I told you, like concentrated H2SO4 or concentrated HNO3 also you can remember, or maybe H2O2 hydrogen peroxide. In the gaseous form, we have oxygen, we have sulfur dioxide as an example, you have chlorine. So these are some of the examples of oxidizing agents. I hope you know what are oxidizing agents, which brings about oxidation. It itself will not undergo oxidation, but it will help the other substance to become oxidized. They are called as oxidizing agents. Therefore, the substance which is getting reduced is your good oxidizing agents. I hope this is very clear. Next, now I move to reduction. Now we are going to talk about reduction. So what is reduction? In the electronic concept, it is defined as the process in which an atom or an ion, they gain electron. Okay, process in which an atom or an ion, they gain electron or electrons. Clear? Let's take few examples, like Cu2 plus 2E. This is going to form copper, or maybe Fe3 plus, right, plus E. It is going to give you Fe2 plus, or maybe Tin2 plus will accept 2 electrons and it will form an element, an atom. Then sulfur can also accept 2 electrons and it can form S2 minus. So here what did we understand? That atom or ion, they are gaining electrons, thus they show reduction. Then reduction can also be defined as those chemical properties where it involves removal of oxygen or addition of hydrogen. Okay, so chemical process in which there is removal of oxygen or addition of hydrogen. Okay, so let's take some examples over here, like removal of oxygen. Example, copper oxide. Suppose if I add hydrogen to it, so what is it going to give you? Cu plus H2O. So what is it? Copper oxide changes to copper, removal of oxygen. Therefore this is your reduction. Okay, similarly ZnO plus C will form Zn plus Cu. So ZnO, removal of oxygen, forms Zn. So what is this? This is reduction taking place over here. Then the next one was addition of hydrogen. So let's take example here also. Chlorine, when combines with H2S, what is it going to form? Sulfur plus HCl over here. Okay, so addition of hydrogen has taken place. From chlorine it has converted to HCl. Addition of hydrogen took place over here. Another example could be like Cl2 plus NH3, right? It is going to form N2 plus HCl. So chlorine has added hydrogen. So these are all termed as reduction process. Okay, now coming to reducing agents. What are reducing agents? Reducing agents, they are the ones that reduce the other substances by either providing them electron, okay, either providing them electron, or by providing hydrogen, or an electropositive ion, or by removing oxygen or electronegative ion. Is this point clear? Again, these reducing agents, they are of three types. They could be solids, they could be liquids, they could be in the gaseous state. Fine. So reducing agents are all those substances which bring about reduction, but they themselves do not go reduction. So the substances which are getting oxidized, they are good reducing agents. Let's take some examples of solid reducing agent, liquid and gaseous reducing agent. Once again, as I said, learn handful of examples over here. So metals like it could be zinc or aluminium or copper, these are good reducing agents. Okay, then maybe for liquid it could be H2O2, hydrogen peroxide. So this is one example which exists as both good reducing as well as oxidizing agent. Then you have hydrogen iodide and so on. Then in the gaseous form we can learn H2S is one of the example, carbon monoxide is one of the example, sulfur dioxide is also one of the example. So with this we finish off with what is oxidation and reduction. Next, coming to theory of electrolytic dissociation. Okay, so over here in this theory, what we need to remember, the ionic theory, that is an electrolyte when it is dissolved in water, it dissociates into free mobile ions, remember. And what are those free mobile ions? They could be cations or they could be anions. Okay, fine. And they allow the electric current to pass through. They allow electric current to pass through. First point is clear. Then second point, all ions, they carry electric charge and they are responsible for the flow of current through the solution. Then the conductivity of the electrolyte, it completely depends upon the concentration of the ions in the solution. The conductivity of the electrolyte, okay, electrolyte depends upon the concentration of the ions in the solution. That is, if there are less number of ions and more molecules, then it is a weak electrolyte. It will allow less current to pass through. Or if it has only free mobile ions, then it is going to allow large amount of current to pass through, and such electrolytes are termed as good electrolytes. Clear? Then the next point, the number of positive charges, they are always equal to number of negative charges in the solution, and thus we can say that the solution is always in its electrolytic equilibrium. What did I say? That the number of positive charges are always equal to number of negative charges. Hence what happens? That the solution is always said to be in electrolytic equilibrium. Therefore, a solution is in electrolytic equilibrium. Okay, this equilibrium is established when between unionized molecules and the ions that are produced. Then in non-electrolytes, what do we know about non-electrolytes? In non-electrolytes, example could be like sugar, solution, it could be, or maybe benzene. Okay, there is no ionization. No ionization. Why? Because there are only molecules present over here. Because they contain only molecules, and therefore they do not allow current to pass through, right? Fifth point, the degree of dissociation. It is the extent to which an electrolyte dissociates or breaks up into ions. Okay, so the degree of dissociation is to which an electrolyte dissociates, okay, or it breaks up into ions. So these were some of the important points about the theory of electrolytic dissociation. Now, what is the difference between Arnes's theory, this theory that was given by Arneses, and the modern concept? Arneses, he carried out that water ionizes the electrolytes, but modern concept says what? The electrolytes are ionic even in the solid state, and the ions are held by strong electrostatic forces which makes them immobile. So water, it only renders ions mobility by just breaking the electrostatic forces. So this was the difference between Arneses and the modern concept. Once again, I'll repeat. Arneses, he stated that water ionizes electrolytes, but modern concept says what? That even in the solid state, the molecule, it contains the electrostatic force of attraction. Water only renders to allow these ions that are already present there to become mobile. Okay, thus by breaking the electrostatic forces between them. So this was the concept or your theory of electrolytic dissociation. Now coming to what do we mean by conduction in the compounds? Let us understand about the conduction in compounds. Now we already know that the electrovalent compounds, they consist of oppositely charged ions, and they are held together by strong electrostatic forces of attraction. Hence, in the solid state, even the electrolytic compound, it cannot allow electricity to pass through. Why? Though it contains ions, but they are all attracted by strong forces, therefore they are not mobile, and hence they will not allow electricity to pass through. But when electrolytic compounds, they are melted, okay, so they allow current to pass through either in the aqueous or in the molten state, or in the aqueous state. Molten state means in the melted form. So for example, NaCl, if we take and we melt it, then what will happen? The forces between the ions, the oppositely charged ions, they break up, and hence free mobile ions are there to allow current to pass through. In aqueous solution, what happens? The opposite charges, they attract each other, and therefore the forces of attraction that is present in the solid substance, it breaks up, and hence free ions are formed. What did I mean to say over here? Like for example, NaCl, this is presently in its solid state, but it contains charges over here. In this solid state, it does not allow electricity to pass through, but when I add water to it, okay, water means HOH, so this is positive and this is negative. So what is going to happen? This positive hydrogen is going to attract the negative Cl, and this negative hydroxide is going to attract the positive Na. Thus what will happen? Because they are attracting towards each other, therefore the bond breaks from here. Okay, the electrostatic force of attraction breaks from here, and hence these ions now are free mobile, and hence they allow electricity to pass through now because free ions are present in the solution. I hope this is very clear to you. But in the solid state, because there is no free ions, therefore it will not allow electricity to pass through. Then what do we know about covalent compounds? Now covalent compounds, remember, they are of two types. Covalent compounds, I had taught you there, they are of two types. What are they? One are non-polar covalent compounds and one is polar covalent compounds. The non-polar covalent compounds will definitely not allow electricity to pass through. Why? Because they do not contain charges. But what about covalent compounds which are polar in nature? They ionize in aqueous solution and allow electricity to pass through. So some of the examples could be like your HCl or NH3 or H2O. These are some of the polar covalent compounds which allow electricity to pass through. I hope till here everything is very clear to you. Next, let us understand now the characteristics of electrolysis. What are some of the characteristics of electrolysis? The passage of electricity through an electrolyte causes the positive ions, that is cations, to migrate towards cathode. Cations, they migrate towards cathode, and the anions, they migrate towards anode. Clear? Thus, the number of electrons gained by the anode is always equal to the number of electrons given by the cathode, right? The products of electrolysis, they're always formed at anode and at cathode itself. Since the exchange of electron takes place where? On the surface of these two electrodes, okay? Loss and gain of electron takes place where? At the surface of the electrons. Only hydrogen gas and metals, they are liberated at cathode. What? Hydrogen gas and metals, they are liberated where? At cathode, and hence they are all electropositive elements. Only non-metals, they are liberated at anode. Non-metals, they are liberated at anode, okay? Therefore they are electronegative elements. Then the mass of the substance produced at an electrode during electrolysis, it is always proportional to the quantity of electricity that passes through the electrolyte, right? Thus we can say that the process of electrolysis is a redox reaction. I should say that the electrolysis only happens in two steps, right? The reaction at cathode, it involves reduction of cations as they gain electrons to become neutral atoms, while at anode it just involves oxidation of anions as they lose electron and they become neutral. Okay, so the ions that are present in the electrolyte, the first step is that they move to the respective electrodes, that is cathode or towards the anode, and there they lose or gain electron and become neutral in nature. So as I said, electrolysis, complete electrolysis happens in just two steps. What are those two steps? First step is that ions, they move towards the respective electrodes, and at the respective electrodes they lose or gain electron and they become neutral, and then they show the complete process of electrolysis. Okay, then what kind of current should flow through the electrolyte? It should always be DC current, not AC. Why not AC? Because AC current does not cause any chemical change when passed through an electrolyte. Do not cause any chemical change when electricity is passed through the electrolyte. Okay, therefore it does not help in electrolysis. So electrolysis, they always need what kind of current? They need DC current or direct current. Okay, that is all for the day. Tomorrow I shall come back to you with the electrolytic dissociation and ionization. Thank you.